Welcome back, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Welcome back, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. So today I'm going to show you some testing that I'm doing on my Camp Chef Alpine stove, where I have it configured that goes in my Kodiak canvas tent. In the section below down there, I will put where the video is showing the stove jack and how I installed it in the Kodiak canvas tent. That way you guys that are wanting to kind of do that, you can refer back to that video. So one thing that people always talk about is testing your gear and things like that, and that's what I'm doing today. And I actually ran into a couple little problems, and I'll discuss that as we go into the video here. So you want to make sure you do testing. Also, when you buy new wood stoves, new pipe, things like that, especially if it's going in a tent, you want to make sure that you are burning it first in an open environment like I'm doing here in my backyard. That way it will burn off any of the manufacturing oils and contaminants, things like that, so it doesn't go in, it's not, all those toxic fumes are not going to be in your tent. So that's what I'm doing today, and this right here is set up in the configuration that is going to be in my tent. So I just duplicated it out here without the tent. And what it is, it goes up to a 90 and then goes straight out the wall of the tent. And in the other video, I did a little bit different than this little X configuration I have back here, this bipod, if you want to call it that, in the back. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. So this right here is the Camp Chef Alpine stove, excellent stove. And I've been burning it for better part of about, I guess, a little over an hour now. And I'll kind of show you a few things. So one of the things about changing this, the original pipe that come with this is it nests, so it goes into one another. And in that video I explained why I had to change it into a 4-inch to adapt to fit my out the wall, and also to adapt to fit my stove jack that I chose to use. So with that, I needed something to now carry all this, because that other stovepipe that came with it nests and then fits inside the stove for transportation. So what I did was I found these cheap, you can find them on the internet, in my Amazon store, which will also be down there. You can find a lot of this stuff. This right here is a replica military sea bag, duffel bag, whatever you want to call it. I guess depends on the branch of service you are in, but a sea bag. And if you look, I've got an extra piece of pipe here that shows that everything fits inside of this one bag. They come in different colors. I bought black just because you're going to deal with soot and things like that. So just to, I guess, cut down on making it look bad, I decided to go with black, so you won't even be able to see it if it does get dirty. So let's take a look. Again, the stove itself, it's already, I've been burning the better part of an hour or so, so everything's starting to get discolored. Most all the toxic things that are on it is off. There's a little bit of things that may be picking up in the camera that's mostly mirage or heat that's rising off the surfaces. I don't really see any true smoke. When I first fired this up and got it really hot, things started smoking at first. So I'll show you this. It's drafting well. I've been burning a little bit of hardwood, a little bit of pine. The pine that I do have is pretty dry and old. I don't see any real smoke. Obviously, you might get some backdraft a little bit when smoke come out when you first open it. Some people were worried about the design of this not coming out of the tent and then going up. I've seen this configuration, this design style in videos and blog posts and things like that, so I wanted to test the theory myself. Does it work? And so far it's drafting and doing just fine, so I don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of people that do something similar to this, and the more pipe you add, I talked about that in the video, the cooler the ends part will get and cause creosote buildup inside of there. So that's another reason on this tent setup, I made this pipe as long as I could without getting too high to the ceiling, so all this pipe is exposed, which will create heat inside the tent. All right, so we talked about, I said I had a problem, again, testing your gear. In that video, I show this piece here that is wrapped. And in that video, there's like an aluminum looking wrap. So this did not work. So my theory was wrong. So I'm having to rethink this. This right here, what you see on there is, and this is just some silver tape that's left over. What you see on there left over this piece is the muffler wrap or header wrap. I think I've got enough room through my stove jack as far as diameter wise. I'm going to wrap this in another layer of this and leave off the silver tape, and then just put the, I have some stainless steel zip ties that I can hold it all on, because you just basically wrap it. It's 2-inch wide tape, and I'm going to wrap that with a second layer because I've got enough diameter room to fit through the stove jack itself. I think that'll help, but it did not cool it near as much as I thought it would. So again, testing your gear will show you these things better than setting up in a tent the first time and causing problems. So this, in my video, I show a different setup. I showed a brace bar coming from one of my center poles in my tent over to the stovepipe to hold it in place. I decided to build one of these. I think this is going to be much more stable. I like this design. What you see here, all this pipe and everything, I have less than $20 in that. So it was well worth it. I bought 2 pieces of 10-foot length. I've cut them of conduit pipe. I've cut it down to size to kind of, so I didn't have just real long poles. You don't have to cut it, but just for transportation purposes, it's easier if it's shorter. So get it to where you want it, cut it off, and that sort of thing. So I drilled holes through and through both pipes. I use this eye bolt here. It's just easier to get a hold of. You don't have to use tools. You can just grab hold of this. I got this knob that fits and screwed it down. I also added, as a precaution, is this wing nut on the end here. And now I can, once I get this knob tight so the poles kind of lock into place a little bit, and then I can tighten that down with this. No tools needed. Once you are done using this for transporting, you just loosen this, and then these collapse into one another, and you just basically have one. It's double, but it's one length of pipe, not this X configuration. And I just have the stovepipe itself tied on with some fencing wire. And I may do something different. That's a little, I showed in that other one, I did like a spring thing, but it didn't work for this. I'm going to rethink that, where I don't have to worry about this fencing wire. I can just grab something that's already attached, roll it around, and secure the pipe. Showing the spark arrestor there. But one thing you want to do when you set your stovepipe up, see how nice and straight it is? There's nothing at kind of at an angle or cocked over one side or the other. You want to make sure everything's nice and even. That way you won't have any leaks, and you won't have possibly run the risk of stovepipe coming apart. So you don't want that either. So, but that shows you there. One thing I might add on this X thing is some like little rubber caps on the end, to keep mud from going in here. Now, one thing you could do, which you got to be careful with, you could sharpen the ends, kind of cut them off at an angle so they kind of dig into the ground, and then I'd probably maybe put some caps at the top. But if you do that at the bottom on those, just be careful with them because they're going to be sharp. Be careful where you're putting them and poking them around in storage and things. But I may do that so they're just kind of little more. You can, like I said, you can dig them down in the ground a little bit if you wanted to keep them from moving around. But yeah, so far, if you look at it, you'll see the discoloration of everything. So some people are a little bit worried about, and talk about this a little bit, about using galvanized pipe in stoves. There's plenty of galvanized pipe that's used in stoves. Matter of fact, the pipe that came with this is a galvanized pipe. It's used all the time. I mean, some people use stainless, some people use whatever, stove manufacturers or stove pipe manufacturers. Then they make black pipe, but for me, this is fine. These galvanized pieces are easy to find in my local hardware store. If you research galvanized metal and toxic fumes, you'll find that it takes about like 1,300 degrees for it to really produce that toxic gas. So at the end of the day, again, I just out as a precaution, I wanted to burn all that off as best I could before I ever put it inside of a tent. But plenty of people use these in a tent, no problems. Long-term exposure, that's one thing. Short-term, I think you're fine. So I'm comfortable with it, with the way I've got it set up. But anyway, guys, hope that was helpful. If any of you guys got any experience with something like this, be sure to share that with us. Something you might recommend or whatever. something you've used. There's one thing to make recommendations and there's one thing to make recommendations when you've actually done something. So I've had a lot of people want to talk about stuff that they hadn't even tried. So, and I get that people have ideas, and that's fine. Share those ideas, but like I said, if you've got experience, that's actually helpful to us, and that would be great in the discussion section below down there. But anyway, guys, also don't forget to check out the Amazon store. Again, a lot of this stuff that we're reviewing, including some of this stuff for this setup with the stove itself and all that, is in that Amazon store. It doesn't cost you any extra to shop there. Just go ahead and click on that link, and you can kind of shop around, or just kind of look around in there. You might find something you might be interested in. But I hope that was helpful, guys. If you have any questions, post those below. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up. As always, guys, like, share, and subscribe. Bring you another video shortly. Have a great day.